Welcome to the Love That Guy podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Ronnie Jean Blevins.
And this is Brendan Reynolds.
He got third all for billing at the end of each picture. That don't really mean much, he would say with a grin. But he held my hand tight when he poured his name out. Only 4 or 5 names down below Errol Flynn.
We are the show that celebrates the journeyman actors, the actors we all know and love, and even though we might not always know their names, we inevitably see them in film and television and think to ourselves, love that guy.
All right, Ronnie, that was an awesome one. Samantha,
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think she's really extraordinary. You know, she's a very private person, but so
Yeah.
how much she was able to share with about process. I feel like we went in a little bit into process, kind of maybe more than any other one. What do you
I was
think?
thinking that too. I was really thinking like she's a total master of her craft and really got into the technical aspects, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you know, I've known Samantha for, I don't know, 24 years, you know, and she was always doing this, like, you know, incredible work, and just like, you know, but we were just kids, you know, no one knew who was going to be still around decades later, and you know, but you know, it always, yeah, I say it in the interview and I mean it, that like when I would see her do this work, there'd been certain times that I'd seen her and I just got overwhelmed with emotion with how beautiful she is, and she was beautiful in this interview with how much she shared, and I think people are going to enjoy it, man.
Yeah, she's a powerhouse actor. She's a fan of yours too.
Yeah,
Like,
very sweet. She was very sweet.
Really fun, very insightful.
Yeah, and by the way, that this intro that we do that I love is Donnie Fritz, and Donnie Fitz, and the song is Errol Flynn, and you should listen to the whole song because it kind of speaks to the beauty and the heartache of being an artist, really.
Really captures the ethos of the show. It's such a great.
Yeah. So should we get into it?
Yeah, let's get it. Let's do it.
All right, here you go, guys. I hope you enjoy. Today's guest needs no introduction, as her talent speaks for itself. A true powerhouse in the industry, her magnetic presence and unparalleled ability to intertwine depth and authenticity sets her apart from the rest. There's been at least 5 different occasions when we've had listeners reach out to request that we get our next guest on this show. You may recognize her from her compelling performances in shows like Criminal Minds, Scandal, and The Morning Show. She was also quite extraordinary in Grey's Anatomy. In 2016, her role in the film Hush, directed by the visionary Mike Flanagan, marked the start of a collaboration that would span over the next 7 years. From her chilling work on The Haunting of Hill House to her mesmerizing performance in Midnight Mass, she has dazzled us with her talent and terrified us with her pathos. Welcome to the show, one of our favorite people, Samantha Sloyan.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, I got to just set the stage because we have, a lot of loyal listeners, and you know, particularly I think artists and actors that are kind of on varying degrees of their journey. So, I just want to set the stage. It's about 20 years ago, maybe even a little more than that. Me and Samantha are in an acting class in Los Feliz, and pretty much East Hollywood, I guess you'd call it. And the Beverly Hills Playhouse has 2 like branches. One was in Beverly Hills and one was in Los Feliz at the Skylight. And me and Samantha were just kind of 2 young actors trying to work it all out, right?
Yeah.
Do you go
Go
ahead. No, you
I
go.
was just saying, like, that particular class was amazing. You being one of the people where you'd show up and you'd just look at the board and get really excited to see what was going to happen that night, which I think is unique. So it's nice.
Yeah. Do you like looking at how extraordinary like your journey's been, right, in these 2 decades? I know that the one of the greatest things I did for myself when I was in that class in my 20s was I didn't have I kind of didn't have a lot of ambition, and beyond just kind of trying to figure the whole thing out and just try to like love what I was doing and being a good actor. What was your like North Star? Like what guided you back then as a young actor?
It's interesting that you put it that way because one, I always viewed you as someone with such focus and purpose and what I would qualify as ambition because you cared so much and you worked hard and, you know, the quality of your work. I think that, yeah, at that point when I was starting out in my early 20s, because I didn't study in college, you know, I didn't, I felt and sometimes still feel that I was behind in the sense that I didn't go to, you know, specific, I don't have a degree in acting or, you know, none of that. So I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do. And I took it really seriously as far as like, well, I have to learn how to do this to the best of my ability because I'm already starting out behind.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that I just focused on trying to, my goal, you know, was to, if I were to get a job, to not stand out as the one person who didn't know what was going on. But
Right.
which, you know, is something I still battle with. There's a lot of times where you're out there and you're like, am I the only one out here who's a little
Right.
confused exactly what I was supposed to be doing.
Right, which like in retrospect is kind of funny because I felt that same way. Like I felt like, God, I'm so late to this game at 22.
Yeah, I know, right? And I feel like even, you know, I feel like our job, you're always told, you know, they're always like, well, you know, it's particularly hard for us to get you work. You know, I feel like it's always you're being told. And, you know, if we started at 21, I'm sure we'd be like, man, we should have started at 15. 15, you're like, man, I really should have gotten the game when I was
100%. Yeah, I think it's right. And I wish I could I think that more like actors who start in their early 20s that didn't necessarily study the discipline or like might have gotten another degree. I wish that they could have it instilled in them that, hey man, you're cool, you're okay. Success in this business is measured really in decades, not years. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, even if you do go to school, you might not have found the thing that works for you yet.
Right. Right.
You know, I do think so much of this job is in the doing. You know, when you show up on set, nobody really tells you. You know, it's trial by fire in so many ways.
Yeah.
Each job, you know, each job, even now, like I learned something new, and that's kind of one of the wonderful things about it. Is you're constantly figuring out a better way or a quicker way from A to B, or, you know, and you learn from the people you work with, and there's just always new ideas and always new approaches, and every grouping is different. You know, every collaboration is different, and
right,
you know, one of the best things about it.
Yeah, and you know, I also, you know, you had we have a friend, Sam Daly, and his dad is Tim Daly. Now Sam's this outstanding actor, but his dad, you know, his dad is Tim Daly. So I always asked him, like, you know, when you were like coming of age, I always contextualize what it's like for my son, like, you know, because my son who's 7, he couldn't be more disinterested in anything. He's just like, oh look, bud, there, you know, he's just so disinterested. It's just kind of charming. But like, I always like ask my buddy Sam, like, what was it like, you know, with your dad Tim, and you know, who was like on Wings when he was like, you know, probably in like Leo's age or a little older. And he says, you know, I always thought that that everyone's parents were on TV. You know, this is a very like unique thing. Now, I know that your dad, James Sloyan, was this great character actor. Did that give you cause for pause?
Yes, that's actually one of the reasons I didn't study acting in college. Was one of the best gifts. There's a few things, like, especially as I got older. In my 30s was when I really realized, because, you know, I was born in LA.
Right.
So I didn't have to come here. And in my 20s, I kind of took for granted the risk that all these people I was in acting class with and that I was working with had taken. They had left home, they had moved here, which can be a really isolating and cold city if you haven't found your people.
Lonely.
Lonely, sprawling, and especially now just unbelievably expensive. And people were working 3-week jobs and then paying for class and spending their off nights there. And in my 30s was when people started to go home. When actors were just like, you know what, I put in 10 years and it's not hitting for me and I got to go home. And I realized the incredible privilege I had of the safety net of my family was here. And not only that, the fact that my parents knew that this was an actual job.
Yep.
Where I didn't ever have to explain to them that it wasn't, my dream was also a job.
Right.
And I think a lot of people didn't have that. They were not only busting their ass out here, but then having to have voices from home being like, well, when are you going to give it up and get your real life started? And that,
right.
And so that is completely something that the gift of possibility of, to stay in their kid and growing up with a character actor, you're surrounded by people on both sides of the bell curve. We had family members who, not family members, but, our friends, family, who just, it never hit, and they struggled to the day they died. And it was rough. And then you had people who did hit and had a good life, and you just never knew what you were going to get.
Yeah.
And so I think that for a while, just as a person, I was nervous about making the jump of like, I'm going to try this and I could fail. Like I could be good, like I could be good and still not work.
Right.
Because we all know that some of our favorite actors don't work. And it's, mind-boggling. And so I think having grown up with that was just helped brace me for, like you said, like this career is measured in decades.
Yeah. And I imagine you guys would have, when you were a kid, you would have years that were like good years. You guys were like,
absolutely,
eating out and taking trips, and then like lean years, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like when I was older, my dad he got a great voiceover gig that ran for, I think like 17 or 18 years.
Wow.
And that allowed us some stability that you don't have with acting.
Right.
Right. Which is something that like, you learn because you just learn you learn why like those network gigs of 24 episodes a season are just amazing, because you could plan your life. You could be like, I can send my kids to school and I can pay my mortgage and plan and save and those are all things that we learn how to do, but in kind of unconventional ways, in different ways, different years. Like you said, some years are great and like hopefully you sock away, learn to sock away some stuff. But definitely, I remember when I booked my first commercial, I was like, "Oh, this is great! I just have to book one of these like every year, and I'm this is great." And then I didn't book another one for like 6 years.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, right."
And then even the commercials don't pay what they used to.
Oh yeah, no, and that's actually been so interesting. It's just growing up with character actors in the 90s, it was a different game.
Like you back in the day, you'd do a guest star, you'd make like $30,000-$40,000 by video.
And then you had that full payment of the reruns and
and it was all network TV. You know what I mean? Like network. I got friends that are like 2-3 years into like a Dick Wolf show, and like I'm like, you have no idea how good you have it, bro. You're like on the last. You are on the last like the a dying breed right there with like these
Right.
24 episodes on network
Yeah.
TV. You know, were you taught like I promise this isn't therapy, but I'm really curious to know because I like to contextualize everything with my son. Were you taught maybe more than most like this kind of did you guys have a culture of artistry growing up in your house? Was that
Yeah. That was both my mother and my father. You know, my mom was an incredible actress in her own right. She stopped working after I was born, but she's also a painter. And my dad, yeah, I mean, I just lucked out. We were going to theater and we watched, movies, and that was also another thing of just being able to talk about stuff, like talk about what you've seen and what you're doing in a context with other people who know what it is to do that.
Yeah.
And
sure.
be able to ask questions like, how do you handle, and how do you handle this? Or how do you, if you're not finding it this way, what's worked for you? And also just having them come and see my work, when I would do theater, and they still do, and and having them be able to tell me like what they saw, and
right,
they it's sometimes not the best critique because they love me, so they're like, you're brilliant, but then every now and then like
so honest.
they will tell you, they're like, actually in this part,
yeah. So you're working, then you get your first reoccur. I guess Scandal might have been your first reoccur?
Scandal was my first reoccurring, yeah.
Does that give you a little confidence? Like, okay, this is like a nice little arc, a little like, was that substantial for you?
Well, the thing that was amazing about that was, one, it was my, it wasn't written as recurring, or at least if it was, that was the intention. It hadn't been communicated to me. So when I was brought back, it was the first time I was like, okay, something I'm doing, like, even if it's not, because when you work on set, it's not just the work you're doing, I don't know, you're just trying to pay attention and you're trying to be part of the team. And, like, it was the first time where I was like, oh, okay, something I did work. So,
right.
So that's going to be great. And also just, again, like the learning and the doing, it's so hard to get better at this job when you're only allowed to do it like 6 days out of a year,
right. Right.
So you try to learn as much as you can. And on that show, Kerry Washington's the lead.
Love her.
Was incredible to watch, and that, I think, was one of the things that I got most out of that, was watching somebody lead a show and, just have all this, just pages of dialogue that she was, I don't know if this is reality, but my experience was like, she was the first one there and she's the last one out. And she was always excited to be there and spread that excitement. And like, when we would do big scenes with a bunch of background, workers and people that would require a lot of people, she would make sure that she was like connecting and, thanking them and being grateful and understanding that they're out there doing the same, hours we are. And I don't know, honestly, I was like, I don't know if I could do that. Like,
right.
And with such grace, it was,
yeah.
It definitely, it was one of those times where I was like, oh, this job is, it requires all of you sometimes.
Yes, for sure. Because like, so much of the culture on a set is from the top bottom. That's why when you have sometimes when you have a set that is like kind of feels wonky, everyone's kind of disconnected. There's a lot of like toxicity. Sometimes you can look at the director, you know what I mean? And on the other side of the spectrum, if it's like really extraordinary, you probably have a really, really great, compassionate leader as a director, and it's the actors and stars,
absolutely. What's tolerated and what isn't, what's allowed to fly and what isn't. Yeah,
for sure. So you meet Mike Flanagan, and me and Brendan are big fans of his and yours.
Me too. Yeah.
Does
I
he
look forward
tip
to
his,
that Halloween every year. Yeah.
does he tip his hat to you in 2016 that he's going to employ you for the next 7 years,
No.
10 years?
No, that was you know, he's when he I mean, sorry to jump forward so much, but like for
Please.
Ken, like when he gave me the opportunity, when I got to read for Bev,
Yeah.
with Beverly King,
Yep.
I really was, I always felt so lucky to be included in these projects. Because at that point I had done Hush and I had done Haunting of Hill House, which is just such an incredible thing to have been a part of, you know, on any level. And then when he was like, I want you to, you're gonna read for this, I just couldn't believe it, because nobody, you know, you're lucky enough if you have a type that people cast, you know, they're like, she does this thing, and so bring her in.
No,
But like very rarely are you asked to take swings that nobody's ever seen you do.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
It takes a visionary to give you that, and how gracious does it feel when they do? You know what I
it
mean?
was, you know, I just felt, and then you're like, man, I better not mess this up.
Well,
Because, you know, it just, but I think in a good way. Like, I think hopefully you always care about the work you're doing. And you're always looking how to do your best job and fulfill it to the, you know, the maximum that you're able to at the time. I think we all have like, I still think about parts. Like, I still think about like, my high school play, and I'm like, oh, I should have done this. Damn it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to talk about Midnight Mass, but I have to tell you that when I first saw you in The Haunting of Hill House, and I saw that the monologue you did where you're communicating your husband about being a parasite inside you, and as you started it, I'm watching it, and then I'm just watching how this incredible monologue it goes on, and I just kind of burst into tears, because it was like, and I can't even think about it right now without getting a little emotional, because it was just so like extraordinary and beautiful, and like I'm like, man, there's my friend just fucking crushing it, you know what I mean? And I gotta ask you, like, I know it might be a broad question, but like that monologue, like, how do you even start with a monologue like that? And for those of you listening who might be a little lost, I'll post a link on my social media to this incredible monologue. But I imagine a lot of you know what I'm talking about. But how do you even start a monologue, like rehearsing for a monologue like that?
Well, the same way I kind of start everything, because, you know, if I'm lucky, I'll read something and I'm like, oh, I have an idea of how this goes. And then in the learning, I lose it completely. And I'm like, oh, I don't know anything. I'm totally at sea. I have no idea what's happening. The thing that's helped me as an actor, that doesn't always, you know, make it perfect, but always helps, is to just know the words as much as I possibly can.
Right.
You know, just try and get that taken care of. So, and I know some people, and that's not for everybody. Some people like to look for the words or find it, and I need to have it just in me, so I'm not wasting any of that time
Remembering.
Yeah, like trying to grab hold of it. So that, and then just, I mean, just some of it's technical, is, you know, like I feel like I felt like it had to have it. What?
Oh, we froze a little bit, but you're okay. You're okay. Yes.
It was the technical of, like, I felt like you know, it needs this pace, or, you know, it needs to follow this train. And then hopefully once you get all the technical stuff in, you can wait and you know, have fun with what happens in the moment. kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Like there's freedom and structure, right?
For me, that is very much the way I work. The more structure I have, the more freedom I feel, which is actually maybe one of the reasons I love working with Mike so much, is because his vision is so clear, but he's also not. And even though he's committed to it, I never feel like he's rigid about it. Like he's always open to what you might bring or what you might think. And he's always the first to accept something else if he thinks somebody has a better idea, which is also rare, so you do feel like, and that was, when he allows room for,
Yeah.
creativity and collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're getting you're getting what you need from the text, right? I sometimes ask this question and I feel like, I don't know, that might be not a great question to ask. First of all, because it's a little, hey, it's none of your fucking business. But I sometimes ask if it's like, do you get what you need from the text, or do you you have to look elsewhere? But sometimes I feel like when you're reading it and the source comes up and you're just dropping into the emotion, it's like, you don't even want to look at it because analyze it, because it's probably everything. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I don't mind. And if there's any question I'm not getting at the point of what you're asking, please ask. Cause I'm talking about this shit, I could do it all day, but yes, I do think the text is huge. And when I am working with him, it is beautifully written, and so that's always something that you have to consider, which I don't know if I'm always great about, is you do have to constantly check in, where are you in the story? What is this portion about? What, why is this here? And am I stepping outside of why that's here, or am I really serving what's needed?
Yeah.
And it's hard because I think I get carried away, you just sometimes do, and then you have to bring it back in. But yeah,
that's great. Brendan, I know that you're a little chomping at the bit because you're a huge fan.
I was thinking about that monologue. We just rewatched it. It's so powerful. And I was just thinking, because I'm not an actor, but I've done some filmmaking, the relationship between the actor and the filmmaker, the director, because I rewatched that scene. Ronnie had sent me the link, and he's clearly writing his own nightmare in that scene, It's like he is the writer that's being eviscerated by the person he cares about and trusts the most. I mean, that's got to be kind of horrifying. So I wonder how he directed you through the psychology from his point of view on that one.
At that time, he wasn't getting, he didn't get into that. I feel like he I guess must be very interesting. I'm not a writer, but to write something that is so personal to you and then see what somebody does with it who doesn't have any of the internal experience of what it was that you were writing to exactly. Yeah. He seems very open and good with and again, I think that this may have to do with the quality of the text of he said what he's wanted, what his piece is on it. And then it's in your hands to kind of filter that through your character, through the moment, through, because that one thing he did say, and I can't remember if it was before or after I did it, but that was also the house talking.
Oh yeah. Yeah, of course.
And which I thought was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And it was, I also had this great prosthetic stomach that they had worked this
terrifying
bladder system. I love being on that side. That was one of the great things about Grey's too. It's a lot of that, just the fake lungs, they have that pump and everything. It's just, I love all of that shit so much. It's amazing.
It's pretty fun.
Amazing. Well, practical work.
That's night and day, right? Both incredibly compelling, a Grey's Anatomy, and then work with the Haunting of Hill House, right? But man, that you're serving two very different gods there. One is maintain this incredible integrity of a show in Grey's Anatomy, but this fucking breakneck speed, and you have to, like, whereas it seems like in a world on a Mike Flanagan world where you are actually like you're not you can take your beats, you know what I mean? And that's not throwing shade at a network TV or Grey's Anatomy, because the fact that they can ride that line of being such incredible, such incredible quality while still having to keep this pace. But you're with the Haunting of Hill House and all the Mike Flanagan shows. These are just like movies. They're basically miniseries, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things, because this format didn't really exist so much when we were younger. They would have the occasional like 2-part movie of the week kind of thing. Right. But for me, one of the most amazing things is having all the scripts at once.
Well,
so you can really plot where you're doing what you're doing. Where the amazing thing about those network shows and how so many of those regulars just have to own their character is that you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be, you have to be so seated. And I'm talking to the regulars who've just been doing this for years, that you can navigate. I mean, it's not improv, but I mean, you get a script and then it could be 2 days later you're shooting it and you have to know like just how this person would react and how they would contextualize this event and it's endless and that way, because it's still going. So like you can't decide and set what your character's full story is going to be, and you don't necessarily know why you're doing certain things. Like it could be like 3 years into the show and they reveal, and this isn't great, but like something, they could reveal like you have an abusive father, and like they never told you that before because it didn't exist, and now you've got to like fold that into everything that's been happening. And so I just think that's remarkable, that kind of just having to be flexible and be on your toes and kind of let things happen and let them go and not be precious about what you've decided, because you don't have control.
Yeah, right. And at the end of the day, that's the big rub of it all is the lack of control. You're doing your best to kind of create these arcs even within like an episode or a scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really interesting. So we talked about Bev, right?
Yes.
That's got I imagine that was like the most fun. Right? You got this religious zealot. She knows her path. She's right. She is backed by God. You know what I mean? She is, I mean, that's gotta be so fucking fun to have that level of like certainty, or maybe not.
She was intense.
Well, no, it was, I do remember like the first day before we started shooting, I was like almost shaking a bit, because like you come up with this character but nobody's and I read for it, so they'd seen my idea, but when you're there and you're like, this is what I have, like I hope this is you
remember the scene you auditioned read for?
Yeah, there was 2. There was a little bit of me in the closet with Kate's character, Erin Green.
Right, with the poison.
No, not the poison. This is
oh yeah, of course.
She's out of Windex.
Okay.
And then the rapid in the carpet scene when I'm just like,
yeah.
Which I was really grateful that was in the audition, because I, for one, I know not everybody's in this camp, but I really enjoy auditioning. So when you do get to take a big swing in the room like that, and that was when I was in a room, which is always a delight. So Yeah.
See, I get consumed. For me, I felt like I would book work in a room and in spite of being in the room, not but because of it, because I'd be a fucking like, consumed, like petrified with nerves. So I would do all the like this work, where it's like, okay, if my nerves are going to be at 8, my work will be at a 9. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when self-tape started becoming a thing, I was like, yeah, this is my jam.
That's so interesting because I mean, Ronnie, I always felt like you were such a force, like even when you would be in somebody's scene as like, just helping them out, some people are like, I need you to like come in and ask for a soda and go away. You would just draw the eyes so much. So I'm surprised to hear that. In a good way, you are just like, what's that guy doing? But
who the fuck is that guy?
but and also I have to say, every time you pop up too, I just get so happy. You usually say out loud, like just like ride book. Like I just get really excited.
Awesome.
When you were in Twin Peaks, man,
Again, yeah.
it was like, I mean, and that's the thing, the quality of the projects you show on sometimes, you're just like, God damn it, like,
oh yeah, thank you.
so exciting, and big ass sets. Which, if you're talking about nerves, I mean, like, just having to come in and deliver your work on, a huge, superhero movie, and hold your own is hard. That's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just nervous right now. You even talking about it, but
Oh, sorry.
no, because it is like it's also kind of like I'll get the nerves, and then I'll start like boxing in my fucking trailer, and then I. Oh, and this is another thing I have to do. I have to tell myself this narrative that oh no, motherfuckers, usually because if you're working with a lead, like, no, motherfuckers, you got all those scenes. I got this one scene. You don't know shit about this scene. So I'm telling myself, this motherfucker better watch out. I'm coming. He better not be like, I gotta tell myself these fucking about like, this guy better keep up, dude. This guy, it's like it's just psyching yourself up. You know what I mean?
But it works, and I feel it because I feel like, I mean, I just always feel like you're such a complete person who in your work, and that makes sense to me, that like you're like, I know everything about the scene, and I feel that. And I also, it's so funny because you're out there, you're in, as you say, you're in there putting all this energy out because your focus and your kind of stillness, I just love. I don't know, you're always like, what is this guy gonna fucking do? And I love it. It's so exciting.
Wow, thank you. I'm just gonna record this and play it.
I wonder, like, the film acting, because I'm not an actor, I'm just curious, like, because you have to be so still and restrained sometimes, right? I wonder if that helps to get that energy out before, when you're prepping, like, to get all that excitement or nervous energy out, because you have to just do such still work on the camera, it seems like.
Yeah. I would imagine it would. I feel like I can really only. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I was talking, actors are always talking about how we feel and what's going on, like how this part was. But I was talking with a friend recently about that stillness and about, I think it is a little different for everyone else, what it requires. And for so long, I also, she was saying to me, and I agreed, like, I also just thought it meant like, don't move. Like, that's not necessarily what it means.
Right.
It's just, and because I love theater work, and I definitely, I mean, I'm also like, my hands are always doing shit that like sometimes I have to, like, it's just like, I'll see it, I'm like, what the fuck is that thing? But
I never know what to do with my hands, by the way, still.
I know. And my hands are like, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this.
And mine of their own.
But I started in my self-tapes sometimes just like holding things. Yeah. So like if you just pan down, you'd see I'm like this, like up here, I'm just super dumb.
And then you'll do shit like, and it's like, and I was like, oh, you phony motherfucker, you're just doing that to do something. Right. Yeah, man, it's
I love a prop. Like, give me Give me a clipboard, give me a pen, like anything.
Right. Yeah. Another thing I think of is I was going to talk about that. Like I've had this thought before, and I might have talked about it with Brendan, and I definitely have had this conversation. There's a great character actor named John Ashton. He's been in everything. He's been on this show. He played Taggart in the Beverly Hills Cop. He was like in all the John Hughes movies, but he's like, we kind of talk sometimes about like, we're like, there's a generation of actors that were told in acting class for decades and decades, like do less, do less, do less. That now you get like these actors, get up there and they're like, and you can barely hear them and they're not doing much. Like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Like sleep.
Yeah. And he's talking about, he was doing, Gone Girl. Is that what it was? With Casey Affleck and Ed Harris played his partner, and Ed Harris, I felt the same way. And I think the scene work might have come out of this improvisation, but Casey was in the scene, and he's like, which he was brilliant in the movie, but like he's not talking on. Ed Harris said, "What? Speak the fuck up." Like, you know what I mean? We are kind of like I think there is a lot of that, and then you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't,
You are. I think if I could offer anything to myself, it's that, like, as long as you're in it and it's, I guess, to use an acting class word, like if it's full, like if it's you like straining to reach something that you feel isn't happening, or trying to force something into the part, I guess maybe you should take a look at it. But if it's true to you and true to the character, I say try it. And then hopefully one of the things, it's so hard because it's like, I say try it, but it's so like one of the gifts about working with Mike and also being, a series, one of the characters that would, I guess I'd qualify as a series regular in these things. Sure. It's like, you have the privilege of trying it, and the director isn't going to fire you or cut your scene necessarily. Like, they'll talk to you. And with Mike, I really have to trust that, like, if something isn't working, he will protect me and either, cut to the other person or help me in the moment find something that might work better. But when when you're coming up and like you're doing co-stars and you're getting into guest stars and stuff like that, it's hard to feel comfortable and confident taking a real chance because it's not that I would feel like, oh, this isn't my place. And like, of course not. Like, if you're a co-star, you don't want to come in and like burn the whole scene to the ground and ruin the narrative or something like that. You do want to be in and of the piece. But your work is just as important. Like, if you have an idea, I'd love to believe that people felt free to try it. And unfortunately, that just isn't always the case. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. I mean, you're trying to cram an episode into 8 days, and like, you don't always have the time to help people through. And one of the things that blew my mind when I was doing network was like realizing that sometimes it's your first day and it's that director's first day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not as a director, but like on that show. And you're like, oh, they're learning what this machine is also.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have the time to, hold, and not just, I'm using the term hold my hand, which I think is, crappy because but in a lot of ways you do have to, direct yourself and come with ideas and come ready to go, and then be open for them to be like, actually, everything you're doing isn't working, so I need you to just like cry the whole way through, or something, and like be ready to go.
Yeah.
And
and then like, okay, here we go. Like,
here we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't worked on it. And that's, again, one of those things about, like, just for me knowing my lines. There was one poster I did where I was like, I got my lines pretty good. And there was like a camera move that they wanted me to say. It was just, I wasn't hadn't done it enough. I didn't have the skill to like kind of adjust in the moment. And since I didn't have my lines down, I was just scrambling. And I went home and I was like, never again. Like, never again am I going to do that to myself.
And on this other side of the spectrum, I think that I kind of got into this because I felt like I was always I always had to out prepare my, and I'm not being self-deprecating here. This is how I felt. Like I had always felt like I had to out prepare my talent. You know what I mean? Like work really fucking hard to like compensate for this kind of lack of innate talent, and so I would do that. So in this process of just like running it 1,000 times, repetition, and I'm still a big on the repetition, just doing it over and over again. But I try to detach like any like moments or rehearsing beats too much, because I would I know I've said this on this show before, so forgive me, but I was once doing a in-person audition like with Paul Haggis, right? And it was for the next 3 days, and I think that was for, and I kept getting up on this same fucking line and like going, taking a ride across my chair and then like leaning on the chair, and then I did it like 3 times, you know, and then we kind of got caught, like I got caught, like, and like we had to stop and recognize the fact that this was really, really rehearsed, you know?
Yeah.
And it's there's the rub with that.
Yes.
You know?
I agree with you. I agree with you that the repetition can't be, it can't be like the emotions. It can't be. Yes, I agree with you. Like my learning has to be separate. Or your intonations just hit the same time, you know. Yes. That's one of the things I love about stage work is that you can't do it again. Like if you're doing a monologue and like every night you cry on this line and it doesn't show up that night, like you can't.
Yeah.
And it's learning that like, oh, okay, well, that emotion wasn't there that night. And sometimes it pops up somewhere else, or, you know, like you have to be able to just, allow things to go differently than you planned and carry on.
And you know, exactly. And I'd finally gotten to the place a few years back where I was kind of like embrace, like, okay, I can't wait to see what comes up, and when we're shooting this scene and how it's going to be different than the many times I did it. And like whatever you crack your neck a little different, something comes up, and then it's like, oh, because it's always fucking interesting. It's always the most compelling thing of your performance when something kind of comes in that you don't do. You know what I mean? Whatever that is, something draws your attention, or you know what I mean, or there's something weird that you do, and then you're like, so I just like, and then you're like, okay, now I'm indulging that shit. Now I'm picking up the glove and Vivian Lee's glove and trying it on her.
Oh man!
Oh my god!
And I mean, and that's also when the beauty of working with other people and listening to them and how they change. I mean, how they letting the person you're working with break you out of what you prepared, because you had no idea what they were going to do.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I do sometimes struggle with like, when you're on someone's coverage, and it's something I'm still figuring out of like how to feed them what they need for their coverage. Like what did I do, and what is still the essence of what we did on the wide or something, so I'm not out here like doing something entirely different under coverage than I've been doing the whole time.
Yeah.
Which was also something you have to learn. Like you've got to give them.
Because your body's like, whoa, that's done. You're like, fuck, my work's done. And then you're like, okay. And I was like, oh shit, what was I doing? And then the first time you fuck up, you get that look like, you motherfucker.
Yeah. Like, it was great for me, but on you, like, and that is so interesting because you don't want to really try. Yeah, it's just like following them and where they are and trying to still connect with them, which is so funny, our job, because sometimes you're trying to connect with them, but like the camera's in your face and you only have like one eye.
Yeah.
what they're able to see.
Right.
It's just so fun.
Right.
I never get tired of
Me too. Me too.
of our job and like
Me too.
walking onto a set. And, I mean, that was one of the things that the Midnight Mass people had designed, this incredible set where like some room, like rooms you never were in, but you just saw through a door. If you walked in there and like opened a drawer, it'd be just full of whatever would be in that drawer. It's just like, such a gift, you know, because the truth is, you know, we should and are able to, you know, do an audition in an empty room where we're imagining all these things. But when they're there, you're like, this is the best.
Oh my God, you're so right. And it's such a gift. And I agree. I kind of feel I feel just as good today as it was the first time. I feel just as gracious, and I try to, like, you know, even maybe even more gracious, you know. Yeah. So I did see you spoke a little bit about theater, and I just have to say that I remember seeing you 10 years ago in a play, Almost Maine, with our Brightmeyer, and directed by Marty Papazian, who was incredible. You know, I feel like he
both of them.
Yeah, he kind of taught me so much. But you're so beautiful, and I always thought that would work great as a movie. If to our listeners, Almost Maine is a play, but it's like a series of kind of anthologies. It's
like the little vignettes. It's different relationships.
Yeah,
you know, it's about relationships.
Yeah, and I thought
you're right. Yeah,
you know.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So we just have a few minutes left. I just want to ask you how you feel about I don't know, this might be an asshole question, but how are you feeling about the industry?
Do it, be an asshole.
2024, how are you feeling about the industry these days?
You know, I'm feeling all sorts of things, you know. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have a really dark answer, but you know, like you said, it's by the decades, and what I've been working on recently is just trying to like reframe what's happening and how I feel. Like one of the things, sorry, this might be kind of a roundabout thing, but when I was just talking about like being on set and opening these drawers and having these things that are actually there that I can touch and interact with. You know, I know that I feel like sometimes, you know, I feel like things like that are in danger as they want to like cut costs and streamline that, like, you know, if they could, you know, wouldn't it be great if we had one room that we could just, you know, digitally display whatever different room we needed. So we'd only have to build one stage, but it could be all these different stages and we'd save all this money. And that's great. But like the beauty of and I'm going to use this word for whatever anybody wants to think about it, that's fine. The beauty of our art and what we're doing in our craft is the collaboration, and as everybody's job is important, and the costumer and the makeup artist and the props and the set deck, like these are the people who are creating everything. And what I worry about is, as people again want to save money in the making so they can have more to keep, like that the beauty of what happens when people work together is, if that's in danger, that's what I'm worried about. Mm-hmm. That like we need everybody, and sure, it's like with the self-tape stuff, or like with the pandemic, you know, out of necessity, people, because we worked during the pandemic, we were lucky enough to, you know, so many people were like, we're going to make this go by, you know, kind of skeleton crewing this And we can, because of necessity, we're going to make this happen. And then I think there was the feel of like, oh, we can make this happen, but let's, thanks. Maybe we never put those things back. And it's like, no. We were doing this as a necessity, but for maximum quality, we do need everybody, and and things like ideas, like you never know when an idea is going to come from somewhere. That's like, I've absolutely had somebody who is, like one wonderful woman who was in my hair department once said something about a character that I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like you need everybody. And so anyway, like, and so I am hopeful, because what else do we have?
Yeah.
But, and I know enough people who care and whose love of the work and love of what happens, is strong. And so, my hope is that like the people who don't care much about that stuff, they'll make their stuff, and that's great. And then I just hope that the people who are like, I don't like the way this is going, kind of band together and try to make it go in a way that they can feel proud and happy about. The hard thing is money, it's like we talk about like it's a job of decades, and people are really up against like, can I hang in there with my 2 kids and no income right now? Like, I don't know. And just think of, that breaks my heart, is like the talent we're going to lose because they just had to put livelihood first. And that's a whole other thing. It's like people just fighting to.
And just from the perspective of the actor, I did kind of learn, I started to kind of like try to, even though it drives them a little crazy, I try to come in early and say, can I go in and relieve my stand-in? You know what I mean? And then like sit there or stand there, and I want to be a part of the energy, because I'm borrowing the energy and I'm borrowing the, I want to like, and I'm talking to people right up until action, because there's almost like the performance, like good or bad, it all kind of belongs to us, because it all belongs to us. It belongs to the wardrobe, or the technicians, and there's certain about the people and the energy of the people, And
that's why we're so fucking lucky, man. Like, just working with people, and every project's new, and you meet new people and new ideas, and no day's ever the same. And like, I don't know. And that's the thing. Like, I think that's why, as crazy as this gets, I'm like, well, I'm not going to let go unless I absolutely have to. And then I don't even know. So why bother?
Right. It's
but again, like, I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage. Like, I'm me. On my own.
It's the same. It's the same.
It's a different. It's just, but I did. I did just mean that, like, I have the privilege of more freedom to, if I'm gonna like make decisions, I just only have to consider myself, which is very different than some people. Yeah.
Well, I love you.
I love you. I don't want to stop. This is okay.
I know. And we had dogs in the background, and we had me my computer doing something, and me saying, shit, my computer. So apologies for whatever happened. But I do love you. You look big. You haven't aged in 20 years.
Same with you.
Oh, well, come on.
We're immortals.
But I thank you so much. This is what I think is my favorite one we've done, and thank you for doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Samantha.
So nice. I'm so nice to meet you, Brennan.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.